South Burbs Hitmen podcast with your hosts, Joe Mandel, Steven Zimmerman, and Vinnie Parisi. We're bringing you the White Sox coverage you need from the perspective of true Southsiders. Grab your Comiskey dog with an ice cold beer and meet us in section 155. Everyone get on your feet for your South Burbs Hitmen.
That ball hit deep. Way back. You can put it on the board. Yes.
Jimenez in the air. Left field. He's your hero tonight. Thanks, Cubs.
Over the head of Jenks. Uribe charges, throws. Out. And the White Sox have won the World Series. Alexei. Yes. 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 Yes! Yes! History! A perfect game by Mark Burley, and what an unbelievable play by 21.
First pitch starts now.
What is going on, everybody, and welcome to another fantastic edition of South Burbs Hitmen. I'm your host, one of your hosts, Joe Mandel, and I'm joined, as always, by my White Sox brothers in arms. I'm talking about Steven Zimmerman and Vinnie Parisi. Gentlemen, the name of the show is Ouch today because it's been a brutal, season, but we'll say specifically the last 3 weeks for this baseball team. Vinny, you couldn't be with us last week, so I'm going to go to you first. How are you feeling about the dumpster fire? And then we'll dive into the latest news right after that.
I have watched the White Sox more in the last 2 weeks I watch them as closely as I can with how bad they are and how uninteresting they have been for most of the last 18 months. But I will say there's something about them now that is intriguing to me. They are so bad on every level. Joe, what did I predict in the beginning of the season? I think I said 61 or
I think we said I have it in my notes. I think we said 61. I'm going back to my notes right here on my computer.
They are way worse than that. There is no way they win that many games. A 0% chance. Honestly, they are on pace to be the first team since the 1960s to lose 120 or more games. I'm here for it. I don't hate them for it. It's none of the players' fault right now. Anymore. You want to blame Moncada for, a lot of things. He's not playing. He's hardly playing. Jimenez, okay, whatever. Like, there are lots of, some of the guys you could be a little annoyed with, but most of the guys who play every single day, it is not their fault. It's not Andrew Benintendi's fault. He didn't give himself $81 million or whatever it is. It was offered to him and he took it. And you know what? Up to that point, he probably did deserve it. He was a good player with the Yankees and the Royals. He wasn't quite as good with the Yankees and the Royals as he was with Boston all those years ago. But, the Red Sox won the World Series with Benny Butt Cheeks in 2018. That's a long time ago now. That's 6 years ago. A lot changes in 6 years in baseball. And it's just, they're becoming interesting to me again, though, because we are starting to see a little bit of progress with certain prospects in the minors. And I agree with Herb. We had Herb on 2 weeks ago. He talked about how he would completely understand if a lot of White Sox fans are just so pessimistic about the prospects, no matter how good they play in AA, AAA, whatever, they never pan out in the major leagues. What's going to be the difference with this class? Okay, that's fair. I agree with Robert. Garrett Crochet, extremely fun to watch. They're probably going to trade him, right? Like he's at least on the block. Luis Robert Jr., he's great, but he's always hurt. He's on the block. I honestly have no problem with that, though, and I'll tell you why. Chuck Garfien once said that this whole last rebuild will be defined by injuries. I agree and disagree. I disagree because Rick Hahn and Jerry Reinsdorf and Tony La Russa all made a bunch of bad decisions that helped the rebuild fail along. But I also agree because think about Moncada and his injury history. Think about Jimenez and his injury history. Think about Robert and his injury history. Even Garrett Crochet and his he's back this year now and he's great. But before this year, where was Garrett Crochet? He was hurt. He had Tommy John. And before that, it was like he was a reliever because he was drafted as a starter, but he never got minor league time because of COVID and blah, blah, blah. There are all sorts of things that went into this, but I'm starting to find them to be interesting again, at least in the sense of guys that are playing on the team. It does seem like they try hard. They stink, right? They're 32nd or they're 30th in runs scored and batting average and all sorts of offensive statistics. I think they're 29th in ERA, team ERA. I mean, it is a truly abysmal baseball.
And Vin, I found our predictions, by the way, if you want me to.
What did I have?
You had the White Sox going 68-94.
Which is a terrible record. Let's make that clear, too.
And I had them going 64-98.
I mean, we were both. I mean, who in their right mind predicts better than that or worse than that for their favorite baseball
and we're
team?
fans, yeah.
Yeah, like that's our favorite team, and we had those low of expectations. And honestly, if they got to 60 wins, they'd probably have to have like a 7 or 8 in a row or this season and to get to 60 wins, right? Like based on they're 17-47 right now.
Keep in mind, and I know we'll talk about this later in the show, but keep in mind they might trade away their best players and be even worse. So
exactly, that's something that people have to remember too when thinking about this stuff. Is where's Robert going to be in mid-August, September? Where's Crochet going to be? Do they trade Pham? You know, does a contender want Pham? Does somebody want anybody else who's playing well? I don't know. I found them because while they were like on the free fall, it was hard to watch. Couldn't stand watching. I turned it off a fair amount of times. I wrote about them a little bit less. I didn't feel like podcasting about them as often as I once did.
Sure.
All that they're like at their peak, they're at rock bottom right now. I think it's fair. You don't go lower than this. It could get worse.
I hope. I mean, I
really
hope
can't. No,
I mean, if they end the season with the worst team of all time, I mean, that might be.
But like they're on pace for that right now, so like they're still at rock bottom.
They still suck real bad.
Yeah, they're basically at rock bottom. It can only really go up from here. And it'll never go. No, it will go up. They're not going to be a 120 loss ball club for any longer than a year. But now that we've accepted it and we know what they are, and it is what it is, they're back to be. It's like I signed this lifetime contract to be a White Sox fan. You know, the ride down sucked, but now we're at the bottom. We'll rise. We'll watch them rise to the top again. Maybe
rise from the ashes. Zim, I'll toss it to you real quick. We're talking about the team and how they're so bad and whatever, and being the worst team of all time. Is there any scenario for you, Zim, where they kind of have like they trade away Robert, they trade away Fetty, they trade away Crochet, whatever? Is there any scenario in your head that's like major league where they're like a bunch of like scrappy guys that pulled together a bunch of wins? And they're like, I'm not saying they're going to make the playoffs, but I'm saying that they actually finish with like 60 plus wins.
No, because the thing with Major League is all those guys had some talent. It just had to be tapped into. I mean, think about the guys that the Sox are perennially putting on this club after they get these big trades. Look at the way they ended last season. It was a bunch of guys that were, good enough to be in the majors, but I mean, it was 25 guys that on 25 different teams would be the 25th guy.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Like their team, generally speaking, is full of roster fillers. It's full of guys that, they're at the bottom of the roster. When you have to make these cuts, they're the guys getting DFA'd for other teams that are your starters for the White Sox.
Yeah.
And again, it's not to discredit them. It's not to say that they're bad ball players. I mean, they'd blow any of us out of the water any day. But when it comes to what you expect from a professional ball club, they're not handling it correctly. And that's what's frustrating with it, is because so many of these guys are just, they are who they are, and we keep trying to pretend that, oh, they could be this, they could be that, if this happens, if that happens, if the other thing comes around, it's not going to happen. Yeah. And like, that's what we keep being sold year after year. And it's just not realistic.
No, it's
I'm
not.
curious from both of you. Either one of you could go in whatever order. Would you fire Pedro Grifol and why?
I would, and I'll tell you one reason. Because the clubhouse appears to be at odds with him based off of some of the comments from Corey Lee I mean, guys know how to run a clubhouse. I don't care who's in there. I think if you put anybody else at the helm, they're going to do the same or even better. So that's, it's not like you're going to hire somebody off the street. You're going to probably put an interim manager in there, somebody from the staff, whatever. I don't know who that would be.
It would be Montoya.
Okay, it would probably, yeah. So then, yeah, I would do it. I mean, send the message now. That's what I would do, Zim.
It's hard to say because, again, with what he's got, is it really going to change anything other than visuals? And I mean, at this point, even if you change the optics of what's going on with this team, is it actually going to make fans or media members any happier? I mean, I really don't think so. And so that's where it becomes a tougher decision to me, is because, I mean, does Pedro deserve to keep his job? No, not at all. I mean, right there, we can sever that. But are you going to do better without him? And that's where it's like, no. So what's the point? And who's going to want the job? Even sure, it'll be an internal hire for now, but then you got to worry about next season. And who do you end up with? You end up with another guy like Grifol. Unfortunately, this roster is not in a position to be firing coaches unless you take the GM out with him. And I know that Getz is only in his first year, and we talked on this last week. Getz is only in his first year, but it seems to me that he's already done enough to be fired.
I concur. I think, Vinny, if I remember correctly, you're on to give Getz a little bit of time train,
No.
right? No,
absolutely not. I mean, I like Drew Thorpe. The Dylan Cease trade wasn't a complete disaster yet. It still very well could turn into one, but I do think the fact that Thorpe 7 months earlier than that, no, not 7 months, about a year and 7 months, was valued as a leading return for Juan Soto. I think that does speak something about Drew Thorpe. Juan Soto's the best player in the league, not named Shohei Ohtani, in my opinion. And, he was valued for him, and they valued Cease that high that they wanted to get a pitcher like that.
And then wasn't Edgar Quero in that trade as well?
Edgar Quero was the Angels with Giolito.
Okay, but I was saying because Quero's been mashing the ball in Double A.
Rick Hahn made a couple of okay trades on the way out, but he shipped out Jake Burgers for a bag of baseball, so nobody will ever remember it. The Giolito trade was okay. They got Corey Lee for not Grossman. Was it not Graveman? There were some good trades Rick Hahn made on the way out that will always be overshadowed by the trash Jake Burger trade.
Yeah.
Getz was so bad at being the head of the player development, though, that when he came in as the GM, it didn't make any sense to me. The only reason I would fire Pedro Grifol, I agree with both of you. Like, it wouldn't change anything. It wouldn't move the needle. But it would kind of send a message.
That's what I'm about, the message.
That, hey, we know we're trash, and we're willing to do something about it going forward. Pedro is no longer with us. He's part of this bad era, if you will, and we're ready to move on. I'm not sure if it'll work in the long run, but it, at least to me, will say, okay, we get it.
The real question is, will Jerry admit that they're trash? And I think the answer is probably no.
No, Pedro Grifol still talks every day to the media. He talks as if they're in a playoff race. And that's another thing that pisses me off about him. He's very unself-aware. But whatever.
This is an interesting take. I hope you're right, B minor. But at this point, I just don't see it. And by the way, Jake Burger is under control for an additional 5 seasons for the Marlins. I mean, believe me, I would love Jake Eater to be, the guy. I'm not seeing it right now. And Vinny and Zim, I think you guys both agree.
No, I mean, first of all, if we're gonna say he's gonna have a better career than Jake Burger, let's get his name right. His name's Jake Eater, and he's been terrible. I mean, it's a bad trade for me. Burger's been sensational. It kind of sucks that the Marlins have been a disaster, but the South Beach Hitmen, the South Burbs Hitmen, maybe we're the problem.
I'm pulling up Eater's stats right now.
Eater currently has a 4.55 ERA. He's 2-2 in 11 games, 55 innings pitched, 65 starts, and a 152 WHIP. So his WHIP is about the only thing that's acceptable to me. I mean, 65 strikeouts is pretty good for only 11 starts. That's a little, almost 6 per start, about 5.9 per start. So that's pretty good. The 4.55 ERA, I've heard that it's a little inflated because of bad defense, but I mean, and when you pair it with a 1.52 ERA, yeah, it does, or excuse me, a 1.52 WHIP, yeah, it doesn't totally add up. So I'll bite that some of that's probably bad defense, maybe just generally being unlucky. Sure.
Fair.
But this is a AA. This is with the
That's what
Birmingham
worries me.
Barons. Jake Berger was in the professionals at this point in his career. If we're just talking about total time accrued and age, you know, they were both the same age when they were drafted, if I remember correctly. Not to mention, Berger was a first rounder and Eater was a fourth rounder. You know, Jake Berger was the 11th overall pick, and for a reason. The guy can flat out hit. Now, my bias is probably showing here, but Jake Berger to this point in the season has a 2.24 ERA with 5 home runs and 22 RBIs. That would be right up there with the team leaders on the White Sox in every one of those categories. So, and that's who he is. At this point in his career, I feel safe saying that's who he is. He's a 20 to 30 home run guy, a 200 to 250 batting average, and I'll probably get you between 60 and 90 RBIs a season. Not to mention, he can play both corner positions and DH for you. So,
And what is that equivalent in a pitcher? What pitcher equals that? Because it's hard to compare. It's apples to oranges
fair.
in a lot of ways. But like, what? I'm agreeing with you, Zim. I think he's a good player. You want him 6th, 7th, 8th in any good lineup. I would say a number 8 hitter. I think he'd be a great second cleanup is what they used to say. Type of guy.
2 guys for White Sox fans, I feel that are similar in my mind to Berger are Javier Vasquez and John Garland, where each of them could at a moment's notice go off, have a great game, have a great streak, have a great season. But generally, overall speaking, those guys were pretty they were middle to above average players. You know, they weren't going to put the team on their back. Garland was never going to be better than a number 3 starter. Javi was never going to be better than a number 3 or 4 starter. You know, that's just who they were. And then you go and you try and build a team around them or a pitching rotation around them, and it just doesn't work. You know, we saw it happen with both of these guys. A little less with Garland because he was kind of tied to Burley his entire career with the Sox. But
and there were points in 2005 where he like matched Burley, if not.
No, and that's what I'm saying. Like, that's why I put Berger in that category, because he'll get hot. He'll mash 12 home runs in a month.
Yeah.
Yep.
But then he'll fall off and go 6 weeks with 1. You know,
and he's on a bad team right now. I mean, he's got a negative 0.5 WAR, but you know.
Yeah.
And do you ever see Jake Eater being even diet John Garland? I don't.
He's a number 5, a number 4 in the rotation to me. Now, does that mean that he can't be an effective left-handed pitcher? No, not by any means.
Yeah, of course.
I mean, the guy's a starter, which is, I mean, he is a bona fide starter. He is not a bullpen arm. And that is something that is not easy to come by all the time. So I'll give them credit for identifying the need there. They have not had real left-handed starters for a long time. So I give the White Sox credit at least on that. I'm not sure the trade made the most sense in the moment, but at the very least, they picked somebody up who actually helps the team. However, the White Sox also then went out and acquired, or shortly before and shortly after, acquired 2 other pretty good bona fide starter left-hand prospects. And excuse me while I pull them up.
No, it's all good, man. It's like I said.
But one of them being Noah Schultz, who is your second best prospect in the White Sox organization, who is Jake Eater's teammate now down in AA.
Noah
and
is amazing.
Pitching significantly better.
Well, it's what Herb said.
With that same defense.
It's what Herb said when he came on. He said there's hope in the horizon for pitching, which
yes. And there absolutely is. When you go and look at the White Sox top 30 prospects, it's a good split of pitchers and field players. The one that concerns me is there's no first baseman. They used up all their first basemen already, putting them in right field.
And
excuse me, but
Noah Schultz he's a top 100 prospect too.
He
Like,
is.
he's
He
not
is a
even just
top
a top White
25
Sox
prospects.
Yeah, every team in the majors would be like, let me get that guy.
Yes, he is, if I remember right, the 19th overall prospect in baseball right now. Colson Montgomery, I believe, is top 10. So, I mean, yeah, you say hope's on the horizon. It's really true. When you look at the White Sox top 4 prospects right now, it's Colson Montgomery, Noah Schultz, Drew Thorpe, and Edgar Quero. Those 4 guys are all playing really well right now.
Well, I was going to talk about Caro and how he's been the last 10 games. I mean, this guy is absolutely raking.
They just bumped him up.
Yeah, I mean,
Yep.
over the last 10 games, I know they just bumped him up in Double-A. The dude's hitting 526 with 8 RBI. He's walked 5 times, 3 homers. He's seen the ball really well. And this is a catcher. I mean, this guy could be super valuable for this team down the stretch. Well, not this season. I hope not anyway. But I guess you wouldn't put anything past whoever the heck Getz wants to call up.
Yeah. No, I wouldn't be surprised to see him come up in September. You know, MLB.com has him as a 2025 projected call up. So I don't think it's unrealistic to see him in September at all. You know, I think we'll see Drew Thorpe and Colson Montgomery before then at this rate.
Well, Drew Thorpe is getting his first start tomorrow.
Yes, we will definitely get into that in a little bit, but yes. I want to keep on this minor league.
No, yeah, we're staying where we're at. I was just pointed out.
Okay. No, really quick, I want to correct a mistake. He didn't get bumped up. I had notifications backwards. He was just named the Southern League Player of the Week. Because of his 10-game hitting streak.
I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised though, Vin, if he does get bumped up here relatively soon.
Oh, to AAA, yeah, I think it's probably coming sometime.
But at the same time, like, do you just let him cook for a little while? Just let him stay hot, build that confidence, like just mash.
Basically, get to a point where, like, why am I even in AA?
That's kind of it. You let him get to a point where he's like, I'm the next freaking Ohtani. Like, I can sit down here and mash all day. Keep throwing these guys at me. I'm going to hit 500 the rest of the year and then bring him up, you know, when he is so confident that nothing is going to bash him down. And B minor makes a great point. No AAA, bring him straight up to the bigs. And I think that plan really hinges on two things. First, it hinges on if he stays this hot or not. If he falls off next week and completely goes over and whatever. The second depends on if we can get Martin Maldonado to the All-Star game. All right. If he goes to the All-Star game, he stays on the roster. Caro does not come up. So White Sox fans, get your votes in. Martin Maldonado to the All-Star game. That is who we want the White Sox to have represented.
I mean, wouldn't we be better off just having a piece of like tissue paper standing at home plate?
What's the difference?
That's what I'm getting at. It's a lot cheaper.
Look, I completely agree with the rally behind it. So that's why I'm giving it my shout out right now.
Hey, it's been done in sports. John Scott went to the All-Star game. He's got like 7 career goals. And he not only did he make it to the All-Star game, he scored 2 goals and won All-Star game MVP. So when Maldonado's the American League MVP for the All-Star game, it's going to be really, really fun.
Now back to our discussion on our minor league system.
Yes.
You know, the White Sox do have a lot of guys that are really promising. Brian Ramos, we've already seen a little bit this season. We've seen he can hang. I think it's just a matter of the adjustment for him. He needs to be an everyday player to get up to speed in the White Sox organization. You know, Oscar Colas is a little further along at this point. Unfortunately, it kind of seems like he is who he is. He's going to be a 4A player. George Wolkow, their first round pick from last year, was recently brought up to single A from high A, or excuse me, from rookie ball, if I remember right. He was at rookie ball. He's now up to single A. He's still a ways off from coming to the bigs. But, you know, I mentioned not having a true first baseman. He strikes me as a guy who could convert there. He's 6'7". He's a lefty bat in the lineup. I don't know for sure if that's something they would consider, but to me, it seems like a potential option.
I mean, up until recently, Andrew Vaughn hasn't done anything up until last week.
Yeah.
And don't forget, they're trading someone, probably multiple people.
Yeah.
And
There's no way they don't.
I've done a Robert trade package for the Cubs, which they're not going to trade him to the Cubs after some thought about it.
Doubtful.
That's just not going to happen. But
I mean, that'd be
the
funny,
Dodgers, it would be funny. But the Dodgers, the Orioles, and the Phillies, all four of those, I had a prominent first baseman coming back. Like all these teams have first basemen that are top 10 prospects in their system that the White Sox could realistically consider in a trade package for one of these guys. So in terms of like thinking about the future at X position, I'm like excited to see what this prospect farm looks like on August 20th.
It's going to look a lot different. There's no doubt. And I had a thought that I totally just lost.
And even though their farm, it doesn't have like the depth that it might have, say, in 2020 or 2019 when we were super stoked. And yeah, a lot of those guys didn't turn out to reach their max, but a lot of them, it did have to do with injuries and stuff like that and bad management and not surrounding them with the right tools. That this prospect team was deep in that time. The thing that separates them now from then, they have a couple high-end guys. I think only 3 teams have 4 or more players in the top 100. The White Sox are one of them. But I still think it lacks a little depth. Yeah. I think most teams' 8th best prospect is better than the White Sox 8th best prospect.
Sure.
Right.
So that's something that needs to be improved on here. And yeah.
Going back to what started this whole conversation, that's part of why I think Getz should go. You know, he's in charge of all this player development. He has been for years. This is not something that came new to him with this role of general manager. He was supposed to be in charge of player development this whole time, and none of them have developed.
Well, I mean, let's be honest. If they become the worst team of all time when they finish record-wise at the end of the season, I don't think there's any way they can bring back Getz.
They will.
I agree with Zim.
There's just... To me, there's no way they get rid of him. There's no way they get rid of him. I mean, Jerry is too concerned, with trying to get taxpayers to pay for his stadium that he doesn't need when he has plenty of money to build it himself.
Well, hey, the man
is in real estate, for God's sake. Like,
he
knows how to do this.
Of all people, Jerry should know that a new stadium doesn't mean it's going to draw the fans. Miami Marlins are the case in point to that argument.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't seem to be in touch whatsoever. You know, he reminds me of some of these politicians that we've got out there that are just these old geezers, completely out of touch. And the difference is, you know, we can go vote and get politicians out and make our voices heard. With this ownership, it's a dictatorship, you know?
Yeah.
That's all it is. We're kind of stuck with this guy. And it's frustrating. Because we're his captives as long as we keep rooting for this team.
Sure. And I just wanted to quickly point out too that there's been big conversation. There's been a hot story that's been developing. But before we get to that, I did want to talk a little bit about a slight change of subject. Buster Olney's Twitter getting hacked today. Did anybody see that?
Oh yeah. There were some funny ones. There
were some real funny ones, but like the one that when I first saw it, I thought was real is that Luis Roberts getting traded to the Phillies. So Vin, before we dive into the Luis Robert talk, what have you heard, if anything? Where are the reports starting to come from? Because I know they're starting to pop up all over the place.
So really quick, shout out to my cousin Harry. Texts me, Luis Robert to the Phillies, ? And I knew Olney's Twitter had been hacked by that point. And I was like, no, it's fake news, dude. Like that just has not happened yet. The only thing I've heard through the grapevine is that they want a Juan Soto to the Padres like return for Luis Robert Jr., which to me, I laugh at. Because although I believe, if healthy, Luis Robert Jr. can be one of the best center fielders in Major League Baseball. I think he's proven that time and time again.
Defensively.
His injury history is an issue. Juan Soto does not have an injury history. Juan Soto does not have a slow start history. Juan Soto has basically nothing negative associated with his name in any way, shape, or form. The Nats were able to let Bryce Harper walk away for nothing and win the World Series the next year because of the greatness of Juan Soto. It's not even close to the same thing. So I don't really understand where this comparison comes from in terms of trade value. But if it's a similar trade package, maybe slightly lesser, then I think the White Sox would be very happy with it. Otherwise, if you don't like it, don't trade him and try to build around him like a normal MLB franchise would.
Yeah, I'm with you. And as you talk, Vin, we're showing some defensive highlights from Luis Robert, and also I think maybe that's one of the things that the White Sox are overvaluing is he's got that power, he's got that defense, he's got that speed, but it's all when he's healthy. Let's take a look at his power while we briefly dive into that. But Zim, your thoughts on the asked return for Robert?
I think it's insane. The guy is not the same caliber player. He is significantly older. He is due, I mean, maybe not a lot more money. Probably significantly less.
I think he's under control for 3 more years, Vin. Is that right?
About, yeah.
Yeah.
And he's not going to make – Juan Soto might be the second highest paid player behind Ohtani when next season starts.
Luis Robert is due $15 million when in superstar money, that's really not all that much. So that's one thing the Sox do have going for them. So 3 years at $15 million per, sure, that's really attractive. But this guy has only been healthy for 1 full season. He hit all of his career highs in that season. And outside of that, I mean, it just seems like you can't count on him. Mentally, it seems like occasionally he'll take a play off, and that's frustrating for, I'm sure, some of the organizations as well. But at the same time, how much of that is because he's never been on a competitive team? Okay, he was on a competitive team for 1.5 seasons.
Yeah.
So to me, it's apples to oranges. I don't see how you can try to get that kind of return for this guy. If you get one big prospect out of it, I think that's a win. And in all reality, like Vinny said, why wouldn't you just be a normal team and try to build around your best player instead of constantly trading him away?
Yeah.
I mean, this would be like the 4th time in 4 years that the White Sox trade their best player if they trade him. And that is so tiresome to a fan base.
Would it shock anyone if he went to the Dodgers or the Orioles or the Phillies?
No.
And he turned into the Hall of Fame talent that he literally looks like he
You
is.
want to know who it would shock me if he was traded to is like Oakland or somebody who has no business making that trade.
Yeah.
He could go to any competitor. I would not be surprised at all. He could go to Miami and I wouldn't be surprised at all.
But I'm saying go there and like be
a Hall of
Fame.
A tick below Juan Soto.
I
it would
like
depend on where he went, to me.
If he goes to the AL East, I think that happens. Yes,
right.
The Orioles, Cedric Mullins has been terrible. And they're as good as they've been. His batting average is like under 200. His OPS is under 600. He's not hitting bombs. Robert's great defensively. He could hit the ball to Pluto 40 times a season minimum.
Yeah.
If he went to that team, I just can't see how he doesn't thrive.
Simultaneously, I could see him on like the Yankees, though. And like the same way that Giancarlo Stanton went to the Yankees, where everybody keeps telling me Stanton is so good. And I'm just like, yeah, but what has he done?
Oh, he's strictly a DH now, right?
Right. Yeah. But I'm just saying, since he left Miami, I'm like, everybody keeps telling me he's so good. But when he was in Miami, I kept seeing that he was so good. And that's how I feel like White Sox fans already talk about Luis Robert. Everybody tells me how good he is.
No, the one guy that you could really say that about is Aaron Judge, but that's a whole nother conversation.
Robert is a bust overall.
Generally speaking, I would agree. Yes. I think
is he?
All of their major. Yes. Again,
he's lived up to expectations once in 5 years.
1 season out of 5 years. That's not good enough.
Man,
that's 20%.
What, guys? I've never thought about it until you said it that way. Interesting.
Let's put it this way. If Caleb Williams on your Bears, right? On all of our Chicago Bears makes the playoffs this season and then doesn't do it again on the rest of his rookie contract, is he a bust?
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, generally speaking, yeah. Probably.
Bust doesn't. I think sometimes people think bust means bad baseball player or bad whatever player. It could also mean unproductive player due to circumstances. And
Injury,
in that sense,
bad team.
In that sense, Luis Robert is very much a bust. Him and Yohan Moncada, who everyone would call a bust with no hesitation. Moncada and Robert have the same weighted runs created plus WAR and similar OPSs since 2020. I mean, they're almost identical players offensively. Robert, great defensively in center field, a premier defensive position. But Moncada's been elite with his glove at third, but it's not a premier. It doesn't up your third base, doesn't up your WAR the way center field does. But still, I just think we crap
To
on
me,
Moncada.
by the way, that's a terrible call, but
I agree.
It is what it is.
I agree.
It's
but
the most valuable infield position to me.
Yeah.
Whatever.
And
anyway,
they value shortstop and catching and center field above it for whatever reason. But I'm with you. It's the hot corner. But it's crazy to me. Everybody's willing to crap on Moncada. And I do think it is because he likes his shiny necklaces and he put out the music video and he was the number one prospect and they traded Chris Sale for him. There are all sorts of outside noises that make people hate Moncada more, even though they've basically been equally as productive. Luis Robert doesn't have more than 2 seasons worth of 4 WAR performance. Moncada has 3. So, yeah.
The thing with Moncada that I think really lets people down is that you gave up Chris Sale to get him, a guy who went out and won a World Series almost immediately on his new team.
Yep.
And then on
now
top
he
of
looks
that,
awesome.
Yeah, he's back to looking good again, too. Moncada was supposed to be the savior of the rebuild, more or less. He was supposed to be the missing piece. He was going to be the guy that tied it all together. And then he comes out really flat. And as soon as he gets good, he gets sick. He gets put on IL. He never returns to form again.
COVID messed him up.
Well, I mean, and I'm not discounting that by any means. I'm just simply stating that's where it all went downhill for him. And that's where I think a lot of patience ran out with him for a lot of fans is because he was finally becoming the guy he was supposed to be.
Yeah, and I also think Moncada was better in 2021 than people will ever give him credit for. That 93 win team. He
got MVP votes, didn't he?
That was the 2019 he got MVP votes. But in 2021, he slacked 375, 412. He had a 787 OPS. So he was one like huge game away from having an OPS over 800. He hit 14 home runs. He had a WAR over 4, which is like all-star. They say like 4 or 5 is all-star, 6, 7 is like in the MVP. And then every now and then you get an Aaron Judge, Shohei Ohtani that goes over 8. Like I just don't get why he gets all the hate and everyone's like, oh, Luis Robert, let's trade him for the world. But you know, perception is everything.
I mean, those two guys, you've got to probably move on from them, honestly.
Yeah.
And like, that's just what it is. I would love to keep Luis Robert, but the guy cannot stay healthy. And if you can get somebody who's just able to play 140 games a year in return for him, that's already a victory. I don't care what his numbers are. Yeah. If he can play center field at a replacement level for 140 games a season, you win that trade. And I hate saying that. I really do. I want the guy to be good, but it's just not happening. So,
Zim and Joe, if I can snap my finger and make each of you 20 years old right now, and I give you a contract and I say you sign on the blue line, you get Luis Robert Jr.'s career. And if you sign on the red line or the red line, you'll have Andrew Benintendi's career. Which line would you sign on?
Benintendi.
Benintendi's won a World Series, hasn't he?
He's won a World Series, and he has been an overall better player.
I don't care who's the better player. He's got a ring on his finger.
That too.
That's all I care about in that. I mean, selfishly speaking, if I'm on a major league, I don't care if I'm freaking scraping the mud off the bottom of cleats after the games. If I get a ring, I'm all about it.
But he was healthy. He was productive. I've seen 2 guys play left field well at Fenway Park, read the monster well. Manny Ramirez and Andrew Benintendi. So it's a very hard thing to do. I feel like I'm ruining Joe's year by pointing out how truly underwhelming Luis Robert Jr. has been for the last.
You're not ruining my year, but I am certainly feeling enlightened in the wrong way.
Yeah,
I think that White Sox fans, White Sox fans and Bears fans are very similar in a lot of ways. And I know because I root for both of these teams, but I've also done, the content creation side for both of these teams. And you have to be able to occasionally look at it from an outside perspective. And the fans of these teams so greatly overvalue them. So greatly. I don't know that there's a team in sports that is more overvalued by its fan base than the Bears and the White Sox. I mean,
It's true.
I could get into Bears discussions right now if we wanted to, but I think that's better saved for another time. But as far as the White Sox go, again, I've said it all season long. I said it in last season. It probably as long as we've been doing this show, I've said it. People keep telling me that Luis Robert is a superstar, but I've never seen it. I have never once felt that like this is the guy that's going to elevate the roster. He doesn't do that. He's who was a superstar in Chicago? Javier Baez. You know who was a superstar in Chicago? Anthony Rizzo. You know who was a superstar in Chicago? John Lester. And what did those three guys do? They went out and won a damn World Series. Paul Konerko, he's a Chicago superstar. He's not a national guy to me. He's a guy
very good.
Right. He's a guy that you talk to a White Sox fan and you go, Paul Konerko, you guys will sit there for 3 hours drinking beers and having a great time talking Paul Konerko. You meet a Yankees fan and you say Paul Konerko, they go, oh yeah, didn't he?
That's fair.
That's
him
my only
and Jeter retired the same year. Nobody gave a crap about Paulie. Although the Yankees honored him. They were the only team that honored him.
I've got the retirement bobblehead from Konerko. It's when he's walking off the field with the hat. It's pretty
Love
good.
that.
That's incredible. He's the closest thing to a legendary player I've seen play for the White Sox, aside from maybe Mark Burley.
Frank Thomas.
I didn't see Frank Thomas.
Okay.
I mean, I did, but I didn't. I did, but I didn't.
That's how I feel about the Big Hurt too. I did, but I didn't. I actually have vivid memories. This is going to make Joe sad. I have vivid memories of him.
Don't say it.
Playing for the Blue Jays and the A's.
I knew you were going to say that.
But that's when I'm when I'm like 11, 12, 13 years old, like getting into baseball. When they won the World Series in 2005,
That's
I was
how
11,
I
and
know
I remember every minute of 2005 postseason. But I can't say at 11 years old I was locking in on every regular season game that year. I wish I was.
Frank Thomas was your DH. Our DH was Jim Thome.
Yeah. 100%.
And
well, I'm not that much older than you guys, but yes, you're right.
But there's just enough of a gap there is all I'm trying to say. Just those couple.
So I got to tell you this Frank Thomas story before I forget. My first White Sox game, I'm probably I guess I'm probably 6 or 7, right? The Sox are taking batting practice when I'm walking around the outfield. Frank Thomas is taking batting practice with a metal bat. He hits it off what is now the Caesars, the left field scoreboard. It bounces off the wall, and I get the ball, and it tore the seams off. I think I have it somewhere.
That's incredible.
That's awesome. Yeah.
A metal bat. It sounded like someone fired off an M80 when he hit it.
No, so I remember sometime in like the late 90s, early 2000s, they went around the league and they did that. They gave a bunch of players aluminum bats to take batting practice. And then on April 1st, the following season, they were like, MLB's introducing aluminum bats this season. And here's some of what you can expect. And there was like a commercial for it. And again, it was all just an elaborate April Fool's Day prank. But I mean, it was cool to see Major League players.
Probably the home opener I was at that day too. So that would make sense for April.
Yeah. The Major League players just like, they can hit, man.
Someone would die if they used one in a game.
Oh my God. Without question.
I honestly think it would take less than a week from someone to either have a cardiac episode from taking one off the chest or die of brain damage from taking one off the head. I think it would take less than a week.
I'm surprised a lot of high schools isn't high school ball still metal bat?
Yes, but they use BB core.
Yeah.
College does too. They went from U-Trip to Beezer to BB core. BB core is not a whole lot better than a wood bat at this point in time. The wood bats, The BB core bats, they're really dead. They have a larger sweet spot than a wooden bat is the main difference. Those
were you
Beezer
at the
bats were
beginning?
deadly, man.
Were you at the beginning of BB Core, Zim, or did you miss it?
Nope, I missed it.
I see. I had 3 years with BB Core.
Yeah.
Sucked.
Yeah, BB core would have gone in either my senior
2010?
year or what would have been my freshman year of college.
That makes
So,
sense.
BB Core sounds like a Pokemon.
right?
I just got
So-
a BB Core at the local 7-Eleven.
It sounds like a kind of music with like really soft drum beats, but like
Oh,
really heavy music.
BB Core. That's good. That's good. I listened to a good BB Core song after some deathcore. It was
Yeah,
awesome.
exactly.
Is BB Core what
Awesome.
Yoan Moncada sings?
Yeah. Que voy a hacerle cuando te vayas.
So I did find one interesting thing that at the tail end of all this, I did want to bring up to you guys.
Yeah, do it.
Just looking at this, if you take the White Sox current roster, right, and you trade Luis Robert and Eric Fetty, right, which is not unexpected
Not out of
by
the
any
question.
means. And then next season, you decline your club options for Moncada, Eloy Jimenez, Max Stassi, Martin Maldonado. Next season's payroll sits at $23 million. Even for cheap ass Jerry Reinsdorf, that is a low number. And it is not at all out of the question.
It's not out
Well-
of the question, and I don't think they would use that extra money to like do
What's-
anything of consequence right away.
What's crazy is at that number, I believe they would only have to win about 50 games in order to have the most efficient regular season of all time
Well,
in
I mean,
terms of wins to cost ratio.
and that's exactly why you can't take Chris Getz to bat after the season and keep him the GM. You can't put this guy in the driver's seat. You're going to have probably a lot of money on the books. You're going to try to lure free agents, and I know that's going to be tough, especially if they're as bad as they are. But the needle in the haystack is our pitching, like Herb alluded to a few weeks ago. You got to have a GM that people are going to at least has a little bit of a track record. We don't have that. They're going to have to sign a manager that has some sort of aura that's not Pedro. So I think that's an uphill battle, but I don't think you can go to bat with Getz. I really don't. I know I'm going back off the track.
What do you do if they go down to this $23 million number, right? Like the entire payroll. And keep in mind, that's keeping your left fielder, Andrew Benintendi, who is owed, I believe, 17 million of that $23 million.
Sure.
So you have one guy accounting for 80% of your payroll. The rest of the team is nothing. And then Chris Getz and Pedro Grifol come out with their, this is not a rebuild nonsense. How do you continue? How do you keep going with that?
That's the stuff that murders me inside. Speaking of murdering me inside, we're going to use that as a wonderful transition to talk about the upcoming White Sox schedule in this week's White Sox Weekly. And the White Sox are about to start, actually. Did it start already? It's about to start in
Yep, they're already in the top of the second.
Okay, there you go. So we got a 4-game series against the Mariners in what is called by many people the best major league park. Apparently it's beautiful. I have not seen it myself, but I heard it's fantastic. T-Mobile Park in Seattle. You got White Sox trade chip Eric Fetty going up against Logan Gilbert tonight. So gotta love to see that. And the big news, which we'll talk about a little bit later, the trade acquisition. Drew Thorpe making his major league debut tomorrow in Seattle, going up against Brian Wu. So that's going to be exciting to talk about. Of course, you got Jonathan Cannon going on Wednesday. All these late games are wild on the West Coast, aren't they? And then we got another trade chip going on Thursday. Crochet making his start against the Mariners, the Mariners, whatever you want to call them, depending on where you're from, against Luis Castillo. He's been great despite the record of 5-7 with a 3.35 ERA. And then we get a 3-game series to close out the weekend against the D-backs, another underperforming team, but not nearly as underperforming as the White Sox. They're a good win streak away from being back to 500. Obviously, those matchups not out there yet. But Vince, Seattle has been pretty good. They're 7 games over. This should be an interesting series. I'd love to see what Fetty and Crochet can do. These are big starts that I think a lot of teams are going to look at because, I mean, let's be honest, the Mariners are going to be a contender. Whether or not, I'm assuming they're going to play for a wild card spot. And if they can go on a run again, maybe they can win the division, but not likely. Vin, thoughts on Seattle?
Yeah, so Seattle's a really good team. I think, there's no reason to think they don't win 3 out of 4, right? I do think the White Sox, whenever Garrett Crochet happens to line up against an ace or an ace cap, I know a lot of people probably think Seattle has 3 aces. But, Castillo, he's been a top dog in the MLB for a long time, going back to his days with the Reds. Yeah. It's kind of surprising. He's kind of giving me Chris Sale vibes. They can't seem to win at a higher clip when he's on the mound, despite his wonderful numbers. But Crochet versus Castillo is going to be a great game on Thursday. I figured Crochet would pitch well against the Red Sox. The Red Sox stink against lefty ace caliber pitchers, and he was very good. Garrett Crochet, I believe, leads Major League Baseball in strikeouts per 9. So that is obviously a highlight of his season. Out of the White Sox season in general so far. The Mariners are way better than the White Sox. It's not close.
It's not close at all.
This is a series where the White Sox should probably just go in and try and feel good about themselves. Guys playing for jobs next year. A Crochet maybe trying to get himself top 10 votes so he can negotiate himself a nice contract. If you're Drew Thorpe, I think you got to be really excited about the opportunity to make your first career major league start against Brian Wu, who is an absolute stud.
He's been awesome this year, dude.
Yeah, he's been so good. It's a really nice matchup for him to go try and take a chance. He's going to face some good hitters, a team that's trying to have a chance to win this season. Like you said, we'll see if it's the wild card or if it ends up being a division championship for them. Obviously, the Houston Astros and Texas Rangers haven't been as dominant as we might have thought coming into the season. The Angels stink. I don't think anybody's expecting much from them this year. So, it's an interesting series. And then you move on to the Arizona Diamondback series over the weekend, the defending National League champions. They're not the National League White Sox by any means.
No, but they're performing for sure.
Yeah, they're underperforming. I think a lot of people expected them to compete this year. But I do think their fall from grace was a little bit predictable because of the division that they play in, right? Like, the Dodgers are going to be tough. The San Francisco Giants are going to be tough every year. The San Diego Padres, they spend a lot of money. They traded for Dylan Cease. They've been in the wild card mix. And overall, the National League has been a dog pile this year. Only 10 teams in all of Major League Baseball are over 500 right now, and 7 of them are in the American League. I believe it's 7. And so, the National League just hasn't been all that good. The Diamondbacks kind of fall into that region, and I still think they smoked the White Sox. I don't have the White Sox winning more than 2 games between now and our next show.
I am aligned. And Zim and I talked about this last week. We didn't think that they were even going to win 1 game, and they didn't win until Friday?
Yes, it was Friday. Due to my love of the Section 10 podcast, I had the banana split. We call it the banana split in Red Sox land. And I happened to you learn dumb stats when you listen to dumb podcasts that zone in on one team like this one. The Red Sox were I think 2-9 this year on Fridays and 8-1 on Saturdays, or 9-1 on Sundays. And it literally lived up to it. And they are very similar to the 2022 White Sox, where they can't get above or below 500 no matter how hard they try. So a split felt inevitable there. But in this upcoming series, there's no predicting what's going to go on in something like this, where you're facing a Mariners team who's trying to win a championship title of their division, and a team like the Diamondbacks to crawl out of a little hole that they dug themselves in. The National League is so bad that the Diamondbacks are far from dead. The Cubs hold a playoff spot with a negative record. So it's one of those things like, hey, if you're the Diamondbacks and you can rattle off 3 wins against the White Sox and that gives you some momentum to maybe win 6, 7, 8, 9 in a row, boom, you're right back in the wild card.
And they could literally do what they did last year.
Exactly.
Literally.
They're not going to catch the Dodgers, right? The Dodgers are going to make one more big move this season. Yamamoto's starting to get good. Glasnow might win the Cy Young. They lead off with Mookie Betts and Shohei Ohtani and Freddie Freeman. That's their 1, 2, 3. How do you beat that? I mean,
you don't.
But as far as making the playoffs, I think that's all that would matter for the Diamondbacks because they have good pitching, and we've seen pitching beat.
Just got to get in.
Yeah, and pitching can beat the Dodgers. The Dodgers look beatable. They're still really good, but they look a little beatable this season if you get hot. So that's where I stand on the whole thing with this upcoming schedule against the Mariners and the D-backs. Little West Coast action.
Yeah, and as mentioned in the chat, Thorpe 7-1 at Birmingham AA with 1.35 ERA.
You know, in 2 Mondays from now, we're going to be talking about a Dodger series.
Huh.
I'm very, very excited for the
And
White
you can
Sox
go see them
the
for
Dodgers.
cheap if you're a White Sox fan. You should do that for sure if you want to see a really good team.
Yeah, I might try to do $5 Tuesday. The 24th might be the Stanley Cup final. Obviously, I would watch that over the 17 and 40-something White Sox.
I hope
but that $5 Tuesday against the Dodgers, that actually intrigues the heck out of me.
Well, yeah, go to see the best players in baseball, and you can get in for the cheapest prices in baseball. Yeah, do it. And speaking of, we were talking about Drew Thorpe a little while ago. Wanted to cue that up with this week's Guaranteed Take. We're going to talk a little bit about Drew Thorpe, so let's dive more into it in this week's Guaranteed Take. Yeah, so Drew Thorpe has been a topic of conversation. Obviously, he's got great stats in AA. He's getting the call up, giving it a go. His debut is tomorrow. And my Guaranteed Take, guys, is I just want to go around the horn and get your expectations for Drew, like best case scenario, what he can do. Is he going to be a number one for this team? Is he going to be an ace? Is he going to be a quality 2 or 3 arm? Just go around the horn, get what you're feeling, get what you're seeing from him. We know how Herb Lawrence feels, but how does Vinnie Parisi and Steven Zimmerman feel about Drew Thorpe? Whoever wants to jump in, take it away.
Zim, you could go first.
Yeah, I expect a perfect game tomorrow and nothing short of it. Anything less is a massive disappointment.
You dog.
You can throw him right in there with Moncada and Robert at that point. You know, at any rate, honestly though, like it's hard to have expectations for these young guys, right? Because look at like Giolito. You know, he came out and got shelled as a kid. And then he picked it up. He put it together. He became a Cy Young guy, and he got a really decent return for the White Sox, all in all. So, wound up getting Edgar Carroll and Jairo Iriarte, who are both guys that are on the White Sox top 30 prospect list and could be legitimate contributors for this team in the future. So, I don't really worry about anything tomorrow, anything immediate. You'd like to see him go 5 innings, 2 or less earned runs, 6 or fewer hits, I think. Like, that's ideal. You know, I don't really worry about the strikeout numbers, to be completely honest. It's more about whether you're getting guys out than if you're striking them out. Consistent outs are a lot more important. Look at Greg Maddux. But overall, like, I want to see him stick with the team the rest of the season. I want him to be good enough that, like, their hand is forced to leave him in the pros the rest of the year. And I want to see him be successful overall, you know, whatever that means, you know, maybe an ERA under 3, average.
It's got some killer movement on some of these pitches.
Yeah, absolutely. Average like 5-ish strikeouts per 9 and, you know, a whip under 2.
This is probably sacrilegious to say, but the vibes and the look, doesn't he kind of remind you a little bit of a certain pitcher we just traded away?
A little bit. I definitely see it.
I'm not saying he's that guy, but he does remind me of Dylan Cease.
It does make you wonder if, like, the way his stuff moves, the way that he carries himself, it makes you wonder if they were like, all right, we have a stash, we can let one go.
I actually never even thought about that when watching his highlights. He does walk off the mound just the way
look at him.
Dylan Cease does. It's true. Like almost like, oh, I don't care. Like, yeah, I struck him out. No shit. Like, I guess I could absolutely see. Never played a single game in the organization of the San Diego Padres. Obviously, we mentioned it before. I think I had my timeline wrong because I'm bad at math. But yeah, he never even spent a single minute with the San Diego Padres in terms of baseball time. So a guy who is valued for the same thing as Juan Soto, who, as we mentioned a billion times on this show, I believe I'd rank him second in all of baseball behind Shohei Ohtani right now. There's not a guy I'd rather have. And in Double-A last year, he went 4-0 with a 1.48 ERA, and he pitched 109 innings and had 138 strikeouts. That was in Double-A, or no, that was in A+ last year. I mixed up the stats. In Double-A, he went 4-0, had the 1.48. He had 44 strikeouts in 30 innings pitched. In High A, he went 10-2 with a 2.81 ERA with 109 innings pitched, 138 strikeouts. That's what it is. And so far in Double-A this year with Birmingham, the Double-A affiliate of the White Sox, he is 7-1 with a 1.35 ERA. And he currently has 56 strikeouts in 60 innings pitched. So the strikeouts per 9 goes down a little bit, but the overall run prevention is way down once again, and he's starting to figure out Double-A a little bit. He's going to skip Triple-A, which there are people out there that believe hitters are overall better in terms of comparison to pitchers in Double-A. There's a lot less of a gap disparity between hitters and pitchers in Double-A as opposed to Triple-A, where things are kind of all over the place, and you got a lot of veterans that are just career Triple-A guys, where that really doesn't happen in Double-A.
Yeah.
Most guys in Double-A still believe they'll be Major League Baseball players one day. About half of Triple-A knows they're going to be in Triple-A for the rest of their life. So there is a little bit of a disparity there. I understand why teams think that way. And he's coming up to the major leagues with high expectations. This is a guy that the Yankees thought very highly of, obviously, at one point in time. The New York Yankees actually drafted him in the second round of the 2012 MLB draft. So, you know, he's from – where's he from? I don't even get where – he's from Utah. So it's going to be one of those things where he comes in. Will he get rocked in his first MLB start? It happens. We've seen it happen to guys like Lucas Giolito and whatnot, but then you got guys like Dylan Cease who come in and kind of they're at their floor.
Yeah, I mean,
right away.
We were both there, Vin.
Yeah,
right?
Against the Tigers. It was an okay game. He didn't strike out 10 and hold them to 0 runs.
He gave up like 3 or 4.
Yeah, something like that. It was a good start for an MLB career. If he goes out and he does his best Paul Skeens imitation, where like he's really, really good right off the bat, that wouldn't shock me either. You know, he had a good game against the Cubs, and then Pittsburgh kind of left him in a little too long. But it's a gamble when you do something like this. And I don't think, based on his pedigree, I mean, how many games has he lost in pro baseball? I believe, if I'm looking correctly, as a pro, he has lost 5 games. So, yeah, because the last time he lost before those 5 games, he was 10-1 in his last year of college with a 2.32 ERA. So he's a really good pitcher with high pedigree. He clearly believes in himself, and the White Sox clearly believe in him. Everybody clearly believes in him because everywhere he goes, he just continues to dominate. There hasn't really been much drop-off no matter where he went. Now, there's nothing like Major League Baseball. I think we're all well aware of that.
Sure.
But we'll see how he does against these Mariners. I'm actually coming in with cautious optimism for Drew Thorpe in this first game.
I like it. Yeah, I'm feeling that this kid is eventually going to be a stud. I think he's going to be an ace eventually. I don't think it's going to be like a Crochet situation where his first year is a starter, full year he becomes opening day starter. But I guess it is potentially a possibility if they do deal Crochet and Fetty, and then next year Thorpe is the number 1. It's entirely a possibility.
Wouldn't that be something?
Why would they trade Crochet? That's what I don't get.
I mean,
I don't think you can.
You're right. I don't think you can either, unless you get a load back, and that even then you feel like a.
I mean, you've still got 3-4 years of control on him.
Yeah,
and that's while he's cheap. That's not even after you pay him. That's while he's reasonably priced. You don't even have to go through arbitration or anything. After that, you got 3 more years of arbitration to screw around with him if you can't get into a big league deal. So it's not the end of the world.
And it's not even like he was a product of the rebuild. He was drafted in 2020. The Chris Sale trade was in 2016. Like, Garrett Crochet's not part of the rebuild per se.
Mm-hmm.
Like he was drafted during the climb of the rebuild. He wasn't even there when they stunk when he was drafted, they were good. They had, a good draft pick that year, but it was from the year before, the 2019 season. That's the way baseball does it. Like, they were en route to their first playoff appearance in 10 years when they drafted Garrett Crochet. And then he never got a chance in the minors, and he's finally come up and shown why he was so good at Tennessee and facing, all these great pitchers. Or all these great hitters in college, and now he's in the MLB just absolutely dominating. I just don't get why they would consider Robert. I understand. They signed Robert when he was 17 years old in 2017 or whatever it was.
Sure.
And he's come up and gotten injured every other game. Garrett Crochet, he had the one Tommy John. Every pitcher gets Tommy John because we have a problem developing pitchers in the United States of America right now. And because we have them throw too hard and too much junk too young. And he had Tommy John like everybody else. That doesn't mean he's injury prone per se. It's different with pitchers. It's different. And so trading him right now, it just makes absolutely no sense in my brain.
I will say I got really excited during this conversation. I picked up Drew Thorpe in fantasy for tomorrow. I'm giving him the start.
Why
not? Yeah, do it.
He's not going to be so bad where it tanks your stats for the whole week. If you lose, it ain't going to be because of him.
I'll take a shot.
Yeah.
The thing is, with everything that we've talked about tonight and last week and 4 weeks ago with Herb.
Yeah.
Like
3 weeks, 4 weeks now. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Whenever the hell that was. But the running theme through all of this has been the pitching. We keep talking, we keep ending up back on it. Like, if they can fill out this roster, right?
Sure.
Then this pitching really has a chance to carry this team quite a bit. You have Thorpe making his debut tomorrow. You have Crochet under control, right? If you trade Fetty and get some good return from him, you can get some good bullpen arms. On top of it, you've got Nastrini, who they just recently sent back down to AAA, who he got shelled, sure, but he looks like he can hang in the bigs. He didn't look out of place by any means. He looked like a guy who just got beat for a night, which happens to every pitcher.
He'll be back up.
You've got Iriarte, who we mentioned before, who's their number 9 prospect, who I personally think he's going to be a pretty decent player. You've got Eater, who we already talked about earlier. You've got Cannon, who's already in the bullpen right now. You've got Steven Wilson, who's already in the bullpen right now. It makes it so that, honest to God, who I think could be a really big surprise trade candidate for this season is Michael Kopech. I think Michael Kopech could be shipped out in a month, and the fan base would go, whoa. And the listeners of our show would be like, oh.
I think Vinny wrote about this. Didn't you, Vinny? You vote about trading him up north?
Yeah, I'd move him. Sure, yeah, up north would make sense because their bullpen stinks and Alzolai's injured and he's been bad when he's healthy. I like the Rays as a team that continuously fix pitching. If he went to the Dodgers, and if I could compare anyone to Kopech from when they were young, it would be Glasnow. The success he's had over there in the Dodgers organization after coming from the Rays. I don't know if the White Sox would ever trade him to the Guardians, but I know the Guardians had interest back in 2021 when they were trying to get Clevenger during his prime, of all people. But, in 2020, trading for Clevenger was like a really good idea. And, the Guardians liked him then. I'm sure they believe they could fix him now. I believe they could fix him now. So yeah, there are a couple teams that I could see really having some interest in Kopech, and I actually lean towards it for sure happening rather than it not happening. I'm with Zim. I think it happens. I would, if I were a betting man, I am sometimes, but not too often. I would bet that it does happen.
Nice, it makes a lot of sense. It makes a lot of sense to me, especially considering, like I just mentioned, the number of young arms that they have ready to go right now that they seem to have some kind of confidence in,
Yep, and it sucks. I wanted to win with Kopech so bad.
Yeah.
He was my favorite prospect when they brought him in, because I liked him with Boston. He was a flamethrower, long, cool hair. His name's Michael Kopech. I had a picture of my background where they put a flame on his arm. It was awesome.
He was the guy that it felt like was going to come in and actually wanted to win. You know, how many of these guys that they brought in, it was like, oh, I got traded here. I guess I'm going to play for Chicago. I'll go write a song about it. Not to point fingers at anybody, but,
Yeah,
Hope came in and was like, I want to be here. I want to win. This fan base is awesome.
And I'll root for him. I'd love to root for him on a contender,
Same. His dad loved his time with the White Sox. I've heard his dad talk about and I used to think oh, your son's gonna be a $300 million pitcher, and then it just never became that. It just didn't.
Yeah, I was chatting with him and trying to get him to come on the show, his dad, for a while, and White Sox PR,
I wonder if we could change that now.
I mean,
with how things have gone.
I'm sure now that they're not in the playoff race. Same thing with Giolito's dad. I was trying to get Giolito's dad for a long time.
Yeah, well,
it is what it is.
Yep. I wish things were different, but they're not.
They're not. But hey, we're excited about Drew Thorpe. I think all three of us are cautiously optimistic. Looking forward to his debut
cautiously
tomorrow.
Optimistic. Screw that, man. Don't cautiously optimistic. I hate that phrase. It's the dumbest phrase.
Thanks.
I'm optimistic.
I'm very optimistic. Tomorrow I'm cautiously optimistic, but the rest of his career I'm very optimistic. How about that?
Sorry, Joe. I don't mean to point a finger at you with that one. I just that phrase has always bothered me. I'm optimistic, but I'm not too optimistic because I don't want to put all my eggs in one basket. So I'm not really actually optimistic. I'm just saying I think it could go well.
My eggs are in the basket. I said I think the guy's going to be an ace in a couple years and potentially if they trade everybody next year. So looking forward to that. But we talked a lot of White Sox baseball. Luis Robert getting traded. We talked about trade deadline. We talked about minor leagues. All great baseball talk. We're a little over the hour mark. Sorry, Vin. I know there's
third period's about to start. Hurry up!
I know hockey's going. What's the score in the Stanley Cup final?
It's 1-1.
All right, so it's like there was no game at all. So Vinny didn't miss anything in retrospect.
We got a big ending coming up, folks. Follow us on Twitter.
That's right. Do the pitch. Do the full pitch.
Bar Down Talking Hockey Wednesday. We will recap what the game that is going on right now. Either the Florida Panthers will have a 2-0 series lead, or the Edmonton Oilers will have won this game and tied it up, going back to the northernmost city in the NHL, Edmonton, Alberta. So we'll see how it goes. It's the longest distance between Stanley Cup final appearances. If you're not flying private, you have to take a connecting flight, which is why every road or every travel separation between games is 3 days instead of 2.
So they did account for it.
Yeah, they did account for it. Game 7 would be 2 weeks from today, and it's only game 2 right now. God. So it's a long series. They're going to get right out of the series and roll right into the draft in the offseason.
Yeah.
So it's
getting
a
like
lot
the NBA out there.
Yeah, seriously. Normally it's not like that. Normally, like the Blackhawks already won 2 of their 3 Stanley Cups by June 10th. And the other one that they didn't was the lockout year 2013 when they had to push things back a little bit. So we're going a little late this year, but I'm not here to complain. I love all the sports.
I don't think I've seen a team trending on Twitter more than the Edmonton Oilers in the history of the world, guys.
Is there a particular reason or one particular fan that caused that?
There's a set of reasons.
Damn it, Joe.
Come on, you guys got to admit that was right off the cuff.
No, that was good. That was good. But yeah, if the Edmonton Oil Cans are able to win this series, it would be really, really cool for Canada to get that cup back after all these years.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
They would need a pair of wins here and there. So we'll see if they can get it done.
And of course, tons of great content coming up on the Ballroom Network this week. You've got Mike North and I tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Central. Chet Walker, Hall of Fame NBA player, on Somebody Big just passed away, former Chicago Bull. So we'll be talking about him. You got Dan and Aldo bare their souls. You got Greg Gabriel talking football. Of course, Vinny talked about. You got Bar Down. You got some hockey talk coming your way, especially with the Stanley Cup final going on. You're eating good in the neighborhood there. What else am I forgetting? There's weekend sports betting tips. You got Willis Twin Towers, great stuff on the network. If I forgot your show, I apologize. There's so many great shows in the network. Make sure you hit like, subscribe to get notified anytime we go live. And we'll still be talking about the White Sox because, like we said, there's exciting young players coming. So maybe it won't be as abysmally sad the rest of the season, or perhaps it will. But either way, we're going to be here to hold your hand or slap you in the face. It made sense in my head before I said it, so we're just going to roll with it. Guys, we've reached the point of the show where we're going to rifle through our shout-outs so Vinny can get to the third period. Vinny, I'll let you go first so you can hop off and watch some playoff hockey.
Love that. And one more quick plug, read the recaps on all this stuff on Chicago Hockey Now and puckpros.com. You don't want to miss it.
Do it.
My shout out is Katie. I love you very much. Thank you for everything. And Father's Day is this upcoming weekend, so I'd like to give a shout out to my dad. I love you, Dad, very much. I'll give you another shout out next week because it'll be the day after Father's Day. But, I love you very much. A lot of us wouldn't be who we are without our fathers, and I love mine very much. So happy Father's Day, Dad.
Awesome, Vin. Appreciate it, man. By the way, great having you back on the show. Before we dive into Zim, quick rundown, Door County. Good?
Good. A lot of rain.
Yeah, you got a lot of rain. Yeah.
There was a lot of rain. The whole drive home, 4 hours of driving in rain. Hard to kind of like keep focused and keep going. I had to play some Avenged Sevenfold and some rock and roll on the way home to keep myself moving. But yeah, Door County, very fun as always. I love Door County. It's one of my favorite like relax vacation. There's relax vacation, there's sports vacation, and there's like luxury vacation. Door County is high on my relaxed vacation rankings.
That's what it's all about, buddy. Make sure you watch The Acolyte one of these days and we can talk about it.
So then I swear to God, Zim could go. Acolyte, 2 episodes premiered on Tuesday.
Yeah.
We were in Door County. Joey and I both decided that I'm going to come to his house tomorrow night and we're going to watch all 3. So I will be caught up by this time tomorrow.
Excellent. Text me. We'll talk.
For sure.
All right, Zim.
Yeah.
What do you got for shout outs, amigo?
No, you guys can definitely spend some time talking about that on the show next week, as I will not be here. I have
you're right.
extenuating circumstances, driving 500 miles. So
I forgot that's coming up already.
Yep.
Wow.
I'm going to drive 500 miles and I'm going to drive 500 more just to be the man who drove 1,000 miles. And
If
to
I
end up,
could
walk 500.
no, and I won't end up in
You.
Door County. So
Tonight.
You're going to
I
walk
don't know.
500 miles then? Are you going to walk or are you going to drive?
no, I'm going to drive. So anyway, I won't be with you guys next week. As long as everything goes according to plan, we're still up in the air a little bit about all of it. You guys will find out if I'm here or not next week when you tune in. So
Hey,
make sure you don't
take
miss it.
We'll take it a week at a time, man. Yeah, you're moving. I totally get it.
Yeah.
I did the same thing when I had to move. So,
Yeah.
um,
So
Well,
big
but we-
shout outs to everybody who's helped make it happen. Family, friends, everybody. I'm still mostly one-armed. You guys can see I'm out of the sling this week.
there you go.
I don't know if I really should be or not. I'm going to go to the doctor tomorrow and verify that, but it feels like I should be. So, just kind of testing it out, getting strong again. A shout out to Team USA in the ICC World Cup, taking down Pakistan yesterday. Huge. I don't know if you necessarily call it an upset, but at least a win for the USA, considering I don't think most people in the US even know what the rules of cricket are. And in Pakistan, it is
That's
the
huge.
most watched sport.
I would call it a major upset.
It's a major upset.
Yes. So, a big shout out to those guys out there. If you're even remotely familiar with the concept of cricket, take a chance and watch an ICC game. These are the best cricketers in the world playing. It's actually a really interesting game. It's like baseball, but faster paced. So if you enjoy baseball, you might get a kick out of cricket. You might turn it off and say, what the hell is this? I don't understand what I'm watching. And it's not interesting to you. And you're totally entitled to that opinion. I'm just saying, if you enjoy baseball, you might enjoy cricket. The biggest tournament in the world is happening right now. And some of the games are even happening in the US. So definitely worth checking out, in my opinion, at least. So at that point, I don't really have a whole lot else going on. Yeah.
I was going to say, at that point, cue the crickets. But
Yeah. A lot of my coworkers are really into cricket, so I hear a lot about it. A lot of them are immigrants from India to wherever they're living now. All over. So we talk about it from time to time because I'm at least on a cursory level familiar with it, and they are.
You work remotely, right?
I do, yeah. Me and all of my coworkers do. So we're scattered all across the country, all across North America. Some people even throughout the world. So again, when you work with, cricket's the number one sport in India, and I work with a lot of people from India, so we get to talking about it all the time. It's honestly, it's really cool. It's been fun to learn about a new sport entirely, where, we sit here and we do this 2 hour plus show weekly about the White Sox, and these guys are just as knowledgeable about the clubs that they watch for the Indian states, cities, and other factions that they play for. And it just kind of opens your eyes a little bit. It makes you realize how hyper focused we can be on the things that we enjoy. So for them to be just as entertained by that as we are by the sports that we're familiar with, it seems so strange at first. And the more you talk about it, you realize we're exactly the same. We're just talking parallel to one another. So
yeah. No, it's exciting. I fall somewhere in between when I watch cricket because I think it's amazing and it's like really fun to watch, but I also like literally have no idea what the hell's going on.
Yeah,
so like
it's
feel
hard.
Both at the same time.
It's hard without the emotional investment. I mean, I totally get it. During the Bears bye week every year, like I don't know what to watch. Like I go shopping. I paint the fence. Like what am I going to do? So
I like it, dude. Love it, man.
That's what makes sports so incredible. It's why everybody watches our show. It's because we share a passion. We share this together with one another. But if you want to explore a different one, like I say, this is the chance if you would like to explore a new sport.
Yeah. Love it, man. And I think we speak for everybody, Vin, myself, and the rest of the network. We're wishing you all the luck in the move, my friend. Best of luck.
Absolutely.
Yes, thank you. I think the two things that I'm most excited for in the sports world now are that the Bears are playing a preseason game in Kansas City, which will not be too far of a drive from me. So I'm going to make every effort in the world to go see that game.
Nice.
And then beyond that, the Savannah Bananas will be on world tour not far from where we're moving next summer. Excuse me. And I think seeing the Savannah Bananas, maybe not necessarily a once in a lifetime event, but it would be like seeing the Harlem Globetrotters in the 60s.
Sure.
It's such a unique, new, different experience.
I think they were at Fenway this weekend.
They were right after the White Sox and Red Sox finished on Sunday. It started over there in Fenway. And I think Zim just got me all pumped. One of these episodes, we'll wait till you're back on the show. Like for sure. We're going to talk banana ball. I want to see what rules. I want to see what rules you guys. I'll have a whole list of rules, and I'll bring them to the table and say which one of these would you like. Like if a fan catches it, that's one will never happen. But like if a fan catches it clean, you're out.
I'm not going to lie. I love their scoring system. I love it.
Yeah, I don't know anything about it, but I do know that they're exciting to watch those games. So I'd love to learn more.
The scoring system is amazing. It makes the games take like 2 hours or less, like without any loss of entertainment value, because the better team still wins. It's not like they're doing weird things with the scoring. But yeah, we'll get into it one of these weeks. For anybody out there, again, interested in watching something new, the Savannah Bananas live stream on YouTube every Saturday. Every Saturday, their games are broadcast on YouTube. So you can watch them there and get a taste of Savannah Banana baseball. They explain the rules before every game. There's entertainment in between innings as well as during the innings. And it's generally just a fun time.
Absolutely.
Love it, man. Great stuff, Zim. Appreciate you, bud. I'll make mine short and sweet. Huge shout out to my beautiful wife, Catherine, our daughter, Audrey. I love you very much. And my Great Dane, Maverick. You guys are my life. I love you very, very much. I want to give a shout out to everyone in the chat that was hanging out all night. Appreciate everybody. The big three here on the screen. I want to shout out Vinny and Zim, and of course Aldo Gandia, the man, the myth, the legend, for letting us have this platform. And then special shout out to I'll do a streaming service to Paramount Plus. There's a show called The Offer, which if you have not watched it is about the making of The Godfather and everything that Al Ruddy, the producer, had to go through to get that movie made. My wife and I are in the middle of a hard binge on it. I think there's like 3 episodes left. 10 episodes, all an hour long. It's like watching 2 movies. It's incredible. Highly recommend it. It's been on my mind constantly, which is insane because I got a lot of other stuff in my mind too. And on that note, reminding everyone, give us a like, give us a subscribe, check out the network, support everybody we do. I'll be back here tomorrow night, 7 p.m. Central with Somebody Big Just Die with Mike North, Chicago Bulls legend Chet Walker, NBA Hall of Famer, passed away the other day. We'll be doing a show on him. Dan and Aldo bare their souls, you name it. Great shows. Vinny's talking hockey on Wednesday here on Bar Down, and he's going to go finish watching the hockey game. Is it still tied, Vin?
Nope, the Florida Panthers just took a 2-1 lead.
All right. So go check out some playoff hockey. Tune in to Bar Down on Wednesday. Gents, always fun being back with you. Vinny, we're happy to have you back. Zim, good luck on the move. For the South Burbs Hitmen, I'm Joe Mandel. That's Vinny Parisi. And without the sling, in the darkness, is Steven Zim Zimmerman, moving to Iowa, doing the thing. Gentlemen, as always, go White Sox. Tomorrow, go Drew Thorpe. We'll see you guys next week. Adios, muchachos.